here at the local park, and I'm going to talk to you about this next video we're going to look at. We've been studying the book of Daniel, chapter 2, looking at Nebuchadnezzar's dream, which is a prediction of the world yet to come, the future kingdoms of the world. And we're going to look at this kingdom that consists of the belly and thighs of brass. Can we find in the Bible where it tells us who this kingdom is? Let's open the Bible and see what it has to say. We're going to begin our study today in the book of Daniel, chapter 2. And just review this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. We're going to be reading verses 31 through 34. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, and his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. This is the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had that he couldn't remember, and he didn't know the interpretation of it. And this is Daniel speaking to the king, reminding him of the dream that he saw. And we find as Daniel continues with this conversation with the king Nebuchadnezzar, he tells him that the king, Babylon, is this head of fine gold. And we found in our study in chapter 5 of Daniel that the breast and arms of silver represent the kingdom of Medo-Persia. So next on this list we have the belly and his thighs of brass. So what kingdom does this represent? Well, let's go to the Bible and we'll see this image and we'll see which nations or nation this belly of brass and thighs of brass represent. Daniel chapter 8. We're going to be reading verses 1 through 8. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw that I was at Shushan, in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Eula. Then I lifted up my eyes, and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, and northward, and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river. And he ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of the heavens. So you say, Ed, what does it have to do anything with the image in Nebuchadnezzar's dream? Well, let's go to the end of Daniel 8. I'm going to skip a section because that next section talks about the fourth kingdom of that image. So here you see a map approximately where Daniel was, where he saw this vision. And today, Elam is part of the modern world, which is, we consider Iran. And you can see this little inserted map shows you the river Eula. And it shows you a palace of Artaxerxes and a palace of Xerxes. I'm not sure which one he was at, but he was at one of those palaces by the river. And this is where he saw this dream. The first thing he saw in his dream was this ram, which had two horns, one larger than the other, and the larger one came up last. And then comes onto the scene this goat with a single horn between its eyes. And in this vision, Daniel sees this goat charging the ram and destroys the ram and comes into power. And this ram, once he comes into power, that single horn is broken off and four other horns come up in its place. So what does all this mean? We're going to go back to Daniel chapter 8, where it gives us the meaning of this vision. We're going to skip the section between what we just read in Daniel 8:15, because it talks there about this fourth kingdom, the kingdom of iron legs in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So starting with Daniel 8, verse 15. And it came to pass when I, even Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Eula, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said to me, Understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. So this vision has to do with the time of the end of the world, before Christ comes. Verse 18, Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face towards the ground. But he touched me and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed the end shall be. The ram which thou sawest, having two horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. So we know that this ram, which has two horns, which one larger than the other, and the large one came up last, represents the nation and kingdom of Medo-Persia. Understanding that the Persian part came up last but became stronger than the realm of the Medes. And so that's what this symbology represents. So we know that Medo-Persia is represented by the silver arms and the silver chest. And so this next beast, the goat with one horn between his eyes, represents the next kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, that belly and thighs of brass. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn is that between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. So we know that this third kingdom is the kingdom of Greece. And we know that that great king is Alexander the Great. And we know that he suddenly died at a very young age, representing that horn between the eyes of the goat being broken. And whereas 4 stood up for it, for 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation. So we know that after Alexander died, his family was murdered, his young sons were murdered, some of his relatives tried to reign for a little bit, but what eventually happened is that 4 generals took control, and it was split up into 4 different sections. That kingdom was split up, and each general ruled over a specific section of that kingdom of Greece. So here we have Alexander the Great. a very powerful man who quickly conquered the world. But in spite of his youth, he died suddenly. But he was this notable horn that was between the eyes of this he-goat, which represents Greece. And after him, there are 4 different generals that eventually took over the kingdom. Cassander is one. He had Greece and the western parts of the neighboring countries, which is known as the region of Macedonia. Next we have Lysimus, who had Asia Minor, the northern regions, known as Thrace, which then include Asia Minor and those parts lying on the Hellespont and the Bosphorus. The next general was Seleucus, who had Syria and Babylon, and from whom came the line of kings known as the Seleucids, which was the eastern part or region of Syria. And this 4th general is Ptolemy, who had the southern portion of the empire known as the region of Egypt. So these are the 4 generals who took control after a time after Alexander the Great's death, and they reigned in 4 separate regions of the kingdom of Greece, or maybe you can call them 4 separate kingdoms that they ruled over. So Daniel 8:23 says this, "And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to a full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up." And this is talking about this 4th kingdom that comes after the kingdom of Greece, that the image in Nebuchadnezzar's dream represented by the legs of iron. So who is this kingdom? We'll find out in the next video. May God continue to bless you as you study His Word.